If you want to start, impacting more people's lives, you need to think about how do you work with other actors, because governments, nonprofits, the private sector, all of these organizations have a role to play in keeping the status quo as it is. And you as an organization have a model that's actually impacting change. And if you can have that model be an influencer for any one of these other constituents, then the potential reach that you can have is far greater than if you go it alone. So if we can't get there alone, what we want to do is understand who are all the other people who are working in this space, and what are ways that we might be able to work with them towards the common goal of having greater impact. Let's actually start to think about who are those other actors in the system. And take a piece of paper and write down 3 to 10 different groups of people, organizations that exist within the system you're working in. So for example, if it's in the healthcare space, you would have governments with the ministries of health. You would have other nonprofit organizations. You would have other social entrepreneurs, maybe for-profit and nonprofit, working in the space. You would have the private sector that it's playing a role here with hospitals and doctors and nurses, so the actual providers themselves. You might have community health workers. Write down all the people who play a role in impacting the problem space. Once you have that list of the actual actors in the space, think about the few that you think actually would be willing to change or have motivation to change. Write down what are the potential incentives that they have that could make them change or not. Like, what is keeping them from preventing them from changing? And reflect on how you might be able to work with them, how you might be able to influence them. Brainstorm a couple of ideas about how you might begin to engage with these different actors given their potential willingness to change. What you should have in front of you is almost like a table. On the left-hand side, you would have the names of the actors, and then on the right-hand side, a couple bullets for each on maybe what their incentives are for the ones that you've chosen. And then underneath that, pick a few of them and how you might work with a few of these actors. Start to brainstorm some ideas there. Health Leads is an organization here in the US. They're really focused on creating social needs in the delivery of healthcare, so that more of the upstream causes of health conditions are being addressed. So you can actually give someone a prescription, for example, for food, or for shelter, or for a refrigerator to house their medicines so that they can actually be able to take them, and have basic sort of needs met that have direct impact on their health conditions. And they used to work directly in hospitals, putting their teams in hospitals, providing this diagnoses and providing these prescriptions and connections to these resources. And what they've done is reoriented the organization to work through healthcare providers and government bodies to start to have healthcare providers and systems actually build this as a benefit within their healthcare delivery. They've reoriented to working with the organizations that are providing the care from the top down, instead of just working within individual hospitals. And their reach is now far larger than what they could have done just working directly, but they've had to reorient the way the organization operates on a day-to-day basis. Their mission has not changed, but the way in which how they're going about achieving their mission has. You're not clear on what the incentives are, but you really feel like there's 2 or 3 actors here that you want to learn more about, then I would say that is enough of a signal for you to start to potentially reach out to people who work in the government, who might work with a certain multinational company, or who might work at another NGO, to start to ask them, what's important to them, their incentives to continue to operate as they are. Don't be limited in the actors that you may engage with already, as partners or as people that you know. Think broad. Think about some of the unexpected people who are impacting the system as it is today, and sort of try to reserve any bias you have. Just map out who are all the people who touch this problem space. Even if one of those actors is, in your mind, a huge cause of the problem, great, put them on there. Maybe they're the most important lever for change in terms of the influence that you might be able to have on them. Maybe your team has never worked with, at the policy level or influencing policy change or working with the private sector. And so you may need to bring on some folks or some talent that has had experience in doing that. College Summit, they are an organization that has a peer-to-peer model with students. What they found is that they needed to bring in somebody who had expertise at the university and government policy level to better understand how does a policy work around this, and how do universities operate. Once they were able to bring in that expertise and talent, they were able to dissect further how they could actually impact it. But it took them understanding that those were areas that they felt like were going to be critical to having meaningful change and impact, for them to know that they needed to bring in someone with that expertise. So be open to that, and know that there are organizations who make this shift, have dealt with this time and time again. When you're thinking about these actors, it's fine to be at the bucket of, government, other nonprofits, corporate, players at that level. But if you have more specifics, like the US government or specific state ministry in India, that's even better. Because then you can start to identify specific people within these groups that you might start to reach out to. And often that's where you're going to have the best sort of initial traction. So this may require some digging, some understanding of who are the people that you might reach out to within the different buckets. And if you know them, write it down. And if you don't, that's fine. Keep going, and then that would be your next step. There's a mismatch between the funding available and the number of organizations that are doing really good work, and sometimes there can be, a feeling of competition with other organizations for competing for those dollars. But the real question that we want to ask is what is your end goal? Why did you get involved in the work that you're doing to begin with? If it's to impact the most amount of lives, then you really need to think about who else could we work with so that we can maybe double, triple, quadruple the impact we can have. And maybe you join forces and go after some of those same funding dollars together. If you're finding yourself stuck and not able to come up with who are the other, actors in the space, maybe take a step back and do some research. If you were able to get to the size of the problem and understand what that was, maybe go back to that and understand who are the causes for this condition happening. Try to talk to other people that you know who are working in the space with you, and look at who they partner with. See who are their organizations or entities or the people that they work with and partner with, and see if anything sparks for you in terms of the types of actors that you might want to also think about working with or have in your list here. When you go through this, you might realize that an actor who you think is the biggest, cause of the problem being the way it is could actually be a place to start, and a place to start to understand why are they, sort of stuck in the status quo, and how might you work with them to potentially change that and bring your model. It can be a little daunting if you don't have credibility with those actors. Even just recognizing that there are actors or groups of actors that you may not be interacting with at all today, but might be important for you to think about acting with, is hopefully setting you down the path of more questions and pursuit of what could be next.